everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crunching Your Growth, where we uncover the tactics and the mindset behind scaling great businesses. And I'm your host, Phil Masiello, as always. And today we're diving into what it really means to scale, not just your business, but your leadership, your mindset, your freedom. So joining me tonight is Herb Cogliano, a scaling up expert, international business coach, former CEO, and someone who's taking his passion for growth from boardroom to the Ironman finish line. And if you're ready to unlock that next level, this episode's for you. I was just talking to Herb before the show, and he was telling me that he's also certified as an exit coach. So I know we've had a lot of entrepreneurs on who scaled their businesses and then exited, and they spoke about the problems they had with exiting or not understanding how to exit correctly, or not doing things. So I think it's going to be an interesting episode. If you remember, we had Vern Harnish on a couple of months ago, who wrote the book Scaling Up and Rockefeller Habits, and he created that whole scaling up methodology, and Herb actually employs that methodology. So it'll be an interesting discussion. I know that everybody liked Vern's show. It was a great show. So we'll get a different perspective from Herb, and so let's bring him in and let's hear from Herb himself. Herb, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the time to join us today and speak to us about what you do.
Yeah, Phil, thank you. Great to be here. Great to be with another fellow triathlete, because Phil is also a triathlete in the day and a marathoner. And I think anytime you're building great companies, it's always a little bit about a marathon or a triathlon to be successful. But pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're 100% right. We had a little bit of that conversation before because I had a mentor many years ago who told me that being a CEO, whether you're the CEO of a small company, large company, whatever it is, you really have to be in shape. You have to be in shape mentally and physically in order to be on the ball, because it's draining. And so training, whether it's for a marathon, whether it's for cycling races, triathlon, whatever you're training for, being physically fit and mentally fit, I think is very important. And sometimes it's a subject that people just blow by.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. My son was teasing me about a year ago that at 59, I better do something and, get off the couch type of thing. But he challenged me to train for, excuse me, an Ironman with him. And I thought he was crazy at first, quite honestly. But, you love your son and we like big challenges. That's what entrepreneurs do.
Sure.
And so I got a coach for triathlon training. I had a structured plan like you would for growing a company. And then I had to be diligent and focused, excuse me, and disciplined with that plan. But if you don't have a plan and you don't have the right reason why you want to do something, normally great things don't happen. So that's the reason having a great son with a great plan behind it allowed us to do that together. Um, the experience was life changing. I don't know if everyone should do it, if I'd recommend everybody do it, but it was absolutely amazing.
It's amazing once you're finished, but I know that when you're doing it, there's a lot of questions that go through your mind about hitting that wall and whether or not you should continue, which is, again, very similar to startups or growing or scaling businesses. We've had a number of entrepreneurs on the show who have said, I don't know any entrepreneur who hasn't hit a wall at some point and started to question his very existence or whether he should continue. And those that push through wind up succeeding or getting at least to the finish line. It's the same thing with this type of thing. You wind up questioning why you're out there, especially after you've been out there for 12, 14 hours. You start thinking, is this really worth it? But then you push through and you make it to the end. It's similar to business.
Yeah. Well, in scaling up, we talk about, do you have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal?
Sure.
And you're going to get tripped up. And when you think about that BHAG, does it allow you to get through the different tough periods? Are you emotionally, and I think, point, Phil, a lot of people have BHAGs. I want to be 100 million. I'd like to serve whatever customers, but my big thing as a coach, how are you emotionally connected to it? Because if I can help you find your emotional connection to it, you'll walk through fire to get it.
Yeah,
And there was many times that we wanted to quit, but when I reconnected to that emotional reason, it re-energized me and the team to get back up and keep going.
sure. So why don't you take us through? I don't know how many people are really familiar with the scaling up
Sure.
process because it really is a process.
Yes.
And why don't you take us through what it is, how it works, and what you do, your part in it, and who really you're focused on?
So, scaling up has four important areas that we need to get right. Number one is our people. Number two is our strategy. Three is the way we execute, get things done. And four is cash. And every owner, when they begin their journey, has a level of capability, whether it's a $1 million company, a 10 million, or a 100 million. But at some point, they hit what I call a ceiling of complexity, where they no longer continue to grow. They hit roadblocks over and over. And we normally find that there's three things that are making this occur. Number one, they don't have the right leadership team assembled. They've been the one making all the decisions. So your bandwidth only takes you so far. Number two, scalable infrastructure. One location was great. I now have five, but nobody communicates. Balls get dropped. And the third one is really understanding how to enter the market. Do you have a compelling, distinctive market proposition?
Right.
And when any of those are out of sync because of your growth, you stall. So scaling up allows you to diagnose where is that actual gap. And then we show you simple one-page tools once we identify the gap to help you get over the gap until you get to the next level of complexity or stuck point. Nobody ever told them to me in high school or college. Most entrepreneurs live, how do I say this, the school of hard knocks.
Sure.
Vern was brilliant by taking this system and make it a simple playbook.
Sure.
And that's what we help people do, unpack the playbook and get their growth going back to where they want it to be. And by the way, not only was I a certified scaling up coach, but as a CEO, I used the playbook personally for over 23 years.
Wow.
And no two companies will implement the playbook the same.
Right.
So understanding where is my personal gap and how to apply the right tool the right way at the right time is the nuance where a great coach guiding you with the playbook can make your scaling up journey so much quicker and less painful.
Sure. So is there a is there a minimum uh, that a person or that an entrepreneur needs in order to get involved with scaling up? So I guess my question is it as useful for a startup as it is for somebody who's doing, say, 5 million in sales trying to get to 10 million or 20 million?
Yeah. So what I love about what scaling up has been able to do is we have a bunch of different on ramps for entrepreneurs. Number one, I'm a $500,000 company. I can't afford an experienced coach. So you can purchase the book for $20. That's going to get you going. You're going to get some insights. You're going to do some quick next steps. Beautiful. We then have an on ramp for a class. I happen to teach the Scaling Up Masters Business course. So for people that read the book but want a little bit more meat on the bone, they take the class. For those that graduate the class, now they want a coach to adopt and personalize their implementation. And that's where people like I would come in. We do webinars, virtual events, but there's many places to begin. My biggest recommendation is just get started.
Right.
Pick any one and get your company moving, and then you'll know where to go next.
Yeah. It's funny. I think, well, it's not funny, but it's amazing to me how many entrepreneurs that can get themselves from 0 to 5, let's say, and get stuck, and they
Yes.
can't get past that 5 to 6 even. And a lot of it has to do with going back and looking at the fundamentals. Number one, like you said, the team, because the team that got you from 0 to 5 may not be the team that can get you to 5 to 20.
Yes.
I always use the analogy of Larry Ellison back in the 90s when Oracle wasn't as big as it is today. He had a team of people, and he ran into trouble in the 1990s, really early on, where the company was stumbling, and he thought he was going to lose it. And when he brought in a coach, and when they looked, the team that got him from where he was to, I think it was 200 million, couldn't get him to that next step. And it was unfortunate because he liked those people. They were loyal to him. They were loyal to the business, but they just couldn't perform. So he had to make some tough decisions. And I think every entrepreneur at some point has to make tough decisions about evaluating their team and being very understanding of what their needs are and what their critical needs are to
Yeah.
continue to grow.
So, Phil, during our journey, a lot of people think scaling up is about growing your company. What I've actually found is that scaling up is really about scaling your team. And if you're committed to scaling your team and they want to be developed, because that's another key one, you got to want to, your company can continue to grow through levels of complexity. What I found during the journey is a certain percent of my leadership team from the beginning wanted to keep growing themselves as quick as the company was growing. But then I had a few that did not want to.
Right.
And those were the people that either were not promoted or stayed in the same seat that they were in with maybe lesser responsibility or ultimately left. But the opportunity for an A player, and I know you've seen this in your journey, A players want a bigger future.
Yes.
A players will not stay with a company that's been around 25 years and still hovering at 7 to 10 million. And the player that would stay with you for 25 years hovering at the same number is probably not the employee that's going to help you double.
Right.
And so you learn these things. And I find a lot of owners in the beginning have a really nice company. They've worked very hard, but they have people that are very loyal, but maybe didn't have the development or the interest in developing. And now their company is stuck at this point.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And when you think about it, it really is about building the team as one of the, not only one of the principles, but actually maybe one of the most important principles, because you can't do anything without a team that can get you there.
Yeah. Well, you know what the mindset was for me? When you're smaller and your name's on the door
Right.
and you're the ones bringing in the white elephant accounts, you get a sense of pride and ego with bringing in the big accounts. But then your coach says to you, I like that. However, can you build a sales department with a manager that can do that? And can you shift and learn how to develop general manager mindsets? And nobody ever taught me that before. So now I had to go from being the biggest account guy to being the best developer of leadership talent. And that was a pivot. That was a pivot for me after 20 years of doing it one way, getting gratification. Now somebody flipped the boat. And a lot of owners have to look in the mirror and say, am I prepared to do that? Or do I get somebody else to come in and do it? That's an option too.
I'm laughing, or I'm smiling, because we have a client who's in the food business, and they did a phenomenal job as an entrepreneur getting their company to where they are today, which is about 20 million. But the CEO just brought in a, senior VP of sales, and the senior VP of sales is becoming very outspoken to say, you as the CEO need to stop thinking that you have to be on every sales call. You have to be on every meeting with every retailer that we're talking to. You can't be doing that. You have to start managing the business. It's my job as the senior vice president of sales. And we're interfacing with the whole group. And I see what his frustration is. And I can see, because he can't be productive. He wants to manage his own schedule to have meetings to sell, but he now has to manage his schedule and the CEO's schedule, because the CEO thinks he has to be on every single meeting, and it's just not possible. And it's not a conductive way of going about doing the business to scale, to get to where they need to be. So I understand exactly what you were talking about.
So, in scaling up, Phil, one of the things we talk to the owner about is that most of them want to work on the business, not in it. But what does that really mean?
Right.
So, working in the business is being on those sales calls. Working on the business is what we call more market facing activities. So if I'm not putting out fires, maybe I could do an acquisition. Maybe I could form another joint venture. Maybe I could open a new territory location or a new product line. But because I'm putting out fires dealing with the day to day, it limits the amount of time to do market facing stuff. But if I'm an A player and I'm looking at my owner, CEO, that's what I want them doing, because that's where opportunity grows for
Right.
all of us.
Right.
And so once we help them see that mindset shift, we have a great result with people now knowing, I know what to do with my time, but I never knew what to do it because that's all I spent my time doing before. And
Sure.
so it's very helpful if they know what they would be doing if they were going to do something else.
Sure. It's true. And a lot of founders, CEOs I found have a little bit of trouble giving up that part in the beginning. Once they do it and they separate themselves and they hire an A player that's going to go out and take over some of the functions of what they're doing, then they see it. But that first 6 or 7 months after they have been told and realized and get coached through, they struggle a little bit with making that transition to focus on the business, not in the business.
Yeah. You know what a beautiful byproduct is of that, Phil, from my exit planning experience? Your company is more valuable the more transferable it becomes. And remember, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So
Right.
when I, as a potential buyer, talk to Phil and I say, Phil, tell me a little bit about your role, and you start telling me that you're sitting in every retail client appointment, what that tells me is that the business is not very transferable, because Phil is the business. And when Phil exits, what am I really getting? So when we help the owner understand the value is in the transferability, and they understand what the buyer is really going to be asking and what answers they're really going to be looking for, they start to understand why it's so important that we put a great leadership team in place.
So explain that part of it, of what you do, the exit planning part, and how that works, and how that really works in conjunction with the scaling up strategy.
Yeah. So some people want to exit plan to sell, but I'm a big believer in exit readiness. Whether you ever sell, be exit ready. Do you know, Phil, that 50% of the companies that ultimately have some transition, it's for 5 reasons that you and I won't like: death, disability, divorce, business distress, or partner leadership disagreements. None of us plan for that. None of us want it. But unfortunately, 50% of us, that happens. So I want to help the owner understand whether you, and by the way, when you sell, it doesn't have to be the traditional sale. You might do an ESOP. You may just do a generational transfer to your next, family member. You may do a partner buyout. You may do a manager buyout. So it doesn't always mean sell and run. It's a transition. And so we want an owner to have a mindset that is always exit ready, where value is the number one thing we focus on. And Phil, how many times have you met an owner with a great company that's making great income, but it's so overly dependent on the owner? They have client concentration issues. One, two clients represent 40% of their business. You don't have any recurring revenue. You don't have great contracts. You're going to make a great income. Your business is just not very transferable, nor will it be valued in the eyes of a buyer.
Sure.
So I like to tell the owner, just because you're getting 500,000 a year from the company doesn't mean you're going to get the maximum multiple when you exit or if you exit, but we can help you do both. And that's when the eyes open up, say, how can I do both?
Yeah.
And that's when we walk through that.
You're right about the five reasons, and I lived through two of those reasons with two different businesses, and the one that really killed us was partner disagreement. It was deathly for us
Yep.
because it was myself and another partner, and we had a business, and it was it affected the board, it affected the investors, it affected everybody, and it just became a problem when we wound up being forced to sell, and really not in a good way, and it really wasn't the outcome wasn't as clean, and you never prepare for something like that. Our attorney used to say, or my attorney used to say to me, whenever we wrote up documents, he used to say that the documents that you're writing up, they're not for when the good times,
No,
they're
right.
for the divorce, they're for when things go bad. That's why you have contracts. They're not there for the good times. So
Yeah. Well, and another part of exit readiness is your personal side. We spend so much time in our company, focused on our company, but 75% of owners that were interviewed, I think it was an Exit Planning Institute study, 1 year after they exited, 75% were completely dissatisfied with their exit. And you might think, well, they left money on the table. They didn't get enough money. That was not the number one reason. Number one reason, they were not happy because they didn't have a personal plan for what they would be doing and what their lifestyle needs would be. And what gets a big myth is that you'll deal with that after the exit. I'll make my personal plan and worry about it. I'm too focused on the business. But the best way to do it is holistically together, having a personal plan, a financial plan for you and your family, and a business value plan together as you're entering whatever stage of exit readiness that you want.
yeah, that's an important point because we actually had several entrepreneurs that built their businesses to whatever it was, 50 million, 100 million or whatever, and then exited, but with no preparation. They exited because an opportunity came along. They took that opportunity and they thought everything was going to be okay because they were going to get their, payout from the sale of the business. But there were two things that every one of them said. One, there was a bit of depression afterwards
Sure.
because they were not prepared really mentally. They didn't know what they were going to do. They sort of lost their self-worth, so to speak, because their business, they were so tied to the business, they didn't know what they were going to do. Some of them had businesses, the same business for 20, 22, 25 years. And the second one was exactly what you just said, which was I didn't have a plan. So I was wandering aimlessly trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I was lost.
Yeah. Phil, have you heard of the term the wealth gap?
No.
So there's three gaps that we normally have to figure out with an owner. Number one's the wealth gap. And the question is, how much do you and your family need per year for you to continue the lifestyle that you'd want post business? And let's say somebody told me 400,000 a year. I'm then going to ask you, what is your personal net worth without your company included? And you might tell me 3 million. No business included whatsoever. 400,000 a year, if you do that math, is 10 million in net worth in order for you to fund that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now your business is gone. You got 3 million today yourself, but we have a gap of 7 million. So if your business is not valuable enough to get you the 7 million today, that means your exit readiness gets postponed.
Mm.
But you know what doesn't get postponed? Those 5 Ds I talked about that could come up: death, divorce, disability, distress, and disagreement. So we want the owner to understand their wealth gap in the beginning. And I'll give you an example. On that 7 million, if I told you, Phil, I'm looking at your company, and based upon your lack of readiness,
Mm-hmm.
your valuation's only about 4 million.
Right.
So 4 and 3 is 7. You have a $3 million wealth gap. But I have some good news. If we focus on some intangible things that drive capital, we call them intangible capital: human, structural, customer, and social capital. If we can build value there, I think your company could be worth 8 million and you'd be $11 million net worth and ready to retire if you ever want it.
Sure.
And so they don't know those numbers. And have you ever been at a country club or with a friend and he goes, you know what? Everyone's throwing around multiples. Hey, Joe sold his company for 50 million. He's in the plumbing business. I'm in the plumbing business. I should get 50 million too. And the multiple was an 8. So if I take my company times 8, I'm at 50 million. What they don't know is that companies sell at a range of multiples. And the more exit ready you are, the probability of you being at the higher end, but you may be at the lower end right now of a multiple range and you don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. That the multiple discussion comes up quite often in some of the groups I'm involved in because, and what I always, people always focus on early on, I think too much about what what the company's worth. Now, a lot of these entrepreneurs and founders are focused on it only because they're in a money raising zone. They have to raise money to grow. And so they're worried about what the valuation is and they peg that on a multiple. But what I tell folks is focus on building a brand, focus on building brand equity, because a brand sells for a multiple of sales, whereas a selling company, a company that's just focused on selling widgets, they sell for a multiple of profit. And
Sure.
so you'd rather be focused on building a brand. And our sweet spot in our agency is focused on consumer product brands. We only work with brands. And so to us, it's more important, to help people build brands because brands do create more value. But at the same time, like what you said, you've got to really focus on some of those other pillars to make sure that you're working to continue to build that business so that it is a sustainable brand for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? For you to have a successful family business transfer, you need to get multiple stakeholders involved early.
Yeah.
Because you know what? That's one thing. If I would have done something a little differently as we looked at our process for our companies, we did great business value creation because we're into scaling up, and that just worked. But we didn't have a family advisor come in, somebody who could work with family dynamics, somebody who could work on a personal plan because each one of the family members were shareholders and each one of us had unique needs of what we may or may not do post transition. And yet you don't know what you don't know and you figure you'll figure it out later, but that can create animosity, um, silos, problems. And I think a smart owner would now look at this holistically and say, I have a legacy. The company is a vehicle to fund that legacy. But who wants to make 50 million and have your family hate you at the same time?
Yeah.
Which I've seen companies have that happen. So looking at this holistically, it's not only about the money, it's about the way you transition and all the relationships that are impacted around it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I watched a company fall apart because of the politics between family members. It was something that the father and the grandfather had started, passed it down, and then the brothers took over, and people were constantly fighting and battling because who's this person's jealous because this person's the CEO, and it just, and then when it became time to, they decided that the right move was to sell the company, and that just created a whole world of lawsuits, and it was terrible because now your family, you're not talking to your family because of business issues, and so I can understand exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I witnessed it. I wasn't involved with it. I just witnessed it from the outside, and I thought it probably needed to be a plan beforehand, and maybe some people just don't know.
Yeah, I think the owners that I work with are very smart and they're very hardworking. But to your point, they just don't know about all these nuances. So hopefully we can help people during that transition. But again, exit readiness being the key word.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, exit readiness, because I think when you talk to people about exit planning, they always think, okay, well, I'm not ready to sell my company. So that's really a good point, is exit readiness. For a lot of entrepreneurs, and I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs build a business to get it to a certain amount, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, and then sell it, probably not ready to sell it, and probably didn't get the best value that they could have gotten on it. So yeah, exit readiness is probably a better term than exit strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Another thing is what do you take home at the end of a sale? Somebody could tell you, wow, we're going to sell the company for 20 million, but then you have 5 million in debt. So now you're down to 15. Now you have a broker fee, 3 to 5%. You have a tax bill of about 35%. And then you're sitting there counting the money saying, well, what do I really take home from this? And does it all make sense?
Don't forget the legal bills.
In the legal bill.
I,
So that's why understanding your wealth gap and making sure that your company is positioned for best in class value, looking at the range of multiples and making sure your company is transfer ready, whether you ever do it, allows you the best of all options.
yeah, it's a good, it's a very good point. I'll tell you, the reason I think about legal bills so much is because uh, we had a business, we started it. This was going back about 20 some odd years ago, and we needed to raise capital, and we got capital from a structured private equity group. And I will never forget sitting in our attorney's office, signing all the documents, and it was a book of documents, and looking at the bill afterwards and thinking, I cannot believe that the legal bills on this. And there was a person, Colbert, Kravitz, and Roberts, Jerome Kohlberg. I actually pitched him. It was after he left KKR, but I pitched him. He was a lovely man. He was a great guy, and I pitched him, and with a business that I had, to not because I wanted his money, but he actually had a smaller business, and I thought that there was a merger potential. But anyway, he said, I don't do anything that's lower than $10 million value. So I'll
Hmm.
never do a deal that's less than $10 million. And this is just, you have to bring me something that's bigger. You have to bring me something that's about $4 million bigger. And I said, why? I don't understand. And he said, because the legal bills as a percentage will kill you. He said, so
Right.
you he
He's
said, at 10 million and above, you're going to spend this much money in legal bills. And he was 100% right. It stays with me because I always think about it. People think, oh, I'm going to merge with this company, or we're going to do this and this and this. And then you get the bill at the end for drawing up the book of contracts and you go, oh my God, we just spent $500,000 on legal bills.
Yeah. Phil, most people think that they should immediately go from startup to scale.
Yeah.
But what I find is, how do you de risk your business before you put gasoline on it and scale it? So think about that for a minute. If you don't have the right employees in place,
Right.
if you don't have the right customer profile, customer type, customer contracts in place, you don't have the right integrated systems to support it in place, do you have more or less risk?
Yeah.
So we always talk about identifying risk, de-risk the business to a level first before you start putting the gasoline on it and scaling it. And I've seen way too many owners go from opening to startup to scaling and leaving all that other stuff, like cracked eggs. You break a few eggs, you leave them on the side of the road. But that is high risk for an owner, lawsuits, liability. So we want to help the owner do a little bit of each as we're going through each stage.
Yeah.
And by de risking, you're actually supporting the value, because an outside buyer coming in, their due diligence, and I'm sure you've seen it, it's all about their risk in
Absolutely.
buying it. And the more you de risk it while building value, the higher your value will be from the buyer.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a very good point. De-risking. I've seen I've seen a lot of founders uh, tell me that they're opportunists because they jump at every opportunity to scale their business, to grow their business. And I shake my head sometimes and try and coach them and say, you have to stick to what you want to be. You can't just go and chase every bright, shiny thing. You're actually doing yourself a disservice. You think that you're going after this and it's going to help you scale and get to the next level, but it's actually hurting you. And it's probably also creating risk because you're not paying attention to the fundamentals that have gotten you here. Now you're trying to chase this other thing because you think it's going to help you get another 5 or 10 million in sales or growth.
Yep.
But so yeah, it's a good. That's another good point, is de-risking the business.
Well, I told another owner during my journey early, we had one division that we started doing scaling up with, had about 25 people, a couple of million in revenue. But the market, we were hitting the market just at the right time. But the A player rating, the amount of people that I would have enthusiastically rehired, no second guessing, was about 38%.
Right.
So even though the market is there, the wind's at my back, what if I hired 150 people without fixing my hiring process? I'd be scaling drama. And so understanding de-risking your business looks at the critical functions and gets them optimized to a way that when you scale it, It's less drama, but more productive. So we went from a 38% A player rating to an 80% A player rating, 100% year over year growth, and 150 people in 24 months.
Yeah.
If I did it the other way, I would have shot myself in the foot.
Yeah.
But and if I didn't have good coaching, I wouldn't have known. And that's the beauty.
Yeah. It's it's funny. Uh, a couple of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to about, in the world of growth, and when it comes to hiring, they've made statements to me that I'm just not at the point where I can afford an A player, so I have to hire. And I always say, well, I think you need to look at that a bit differently, because there's a point in time where you can't afford to not hire an A player. You need A players. Whether you
Yes.
can afford them or not is not the issue. If you have a need, and if you want an A player, and if you think that A player is going to help you get from A to B, you need to hire that A player, whatever you have to do to get them. Because hiring a B player or a C player just because that's all you can afford is never going to work out. At least from what I've seen.
So our definition of an A player is the best person you can find for the budget that you have.
Yeah.
And think about it. Have you ever gone, not that I, not us, a triathlete shouldn't say this, but have you ever gone to a McDonald's?
Not in a long, long time, but
Okay,
yeah,
so it's been a while for me, but when you're younger, you do that. But you've been to a McDonald's where you've had an absolute B or C player serve you.
sure,
And yet I'm sure you've been to one where you had an A player.
sure.
And that person was making 8, 10, 12 bucks an hour, and they were doing their job and they were focused on point and made you feel great for coming in. Every company at every budget can have an A player if you're willing to do the work to find and uncover them.
That's a funny analogy, because I'll tell you why. This is going back. We built a beauty brand, and we were doing a tremendous amount of online sales, and we were growing. We were on the shopping channels. We were in retail. We had e-commerce. We were on Amazon, and we needed better customer service, both online and as well as an 800 number that we had. And I was at a Dunkin' Donuts one day getting coffee. I used to go to the gym in the morning. I'd stop and get a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. And there was this young woman that was working behind the counter. And I went to the same one every day, and she was new, and she was fantastic, phenomenal. And this place was chaos. This Dunkin', it was just in a very busy area, and stanchions up. Sometimes the line was out the door, and it was chaos. And she handled it really well. After about 2 weeks, I handed her my business card and I said, call me. I said, I have a job for you. I don't know what they're paying you here, but I have a job for you. And I hired her to do customer service. And she said, I don't know anything about this business. I don't know anything about beauty. I don't know anything about customer service. I said, I'll teach you that. I care about how you handle things,
Sure.
and you're not flustered, and you're going to have people that are going to be mad at you and yell at you. My order didn't get here, and shipping, and you have to calm them down. And that's sort of what you did. And she was phenomenal at it. And we had her for almost 4 or 5 years just doing customer service. And she wound up having a couple of people underneath her, but I felt that she was an A player. But again, I found her in that way by going into a Dunkin' Donuts.
I think a lot of us, we're so busy, we're so overwhelmed, we settle,
Yeah.
and then we say we can never find, and we use fishing holes. So imagine where you could go where the fish would be plentiful for the type of bait that you had on your hook. We were in the staffing industry, but we would go to hospitality because they worked 7 days a week, nights and weekends, no commission, okay pay, and not much in the way of benefits.
Right.
But what they were great at is reading people,
Yeah.
sense of urgency, communication skills, and that's what the staffing industry needed.
Yeah.
So if you can identify groups of people that would look at your opportunity as a step up, equal or better, you have a shot. You know what we did in the beginning, Phil, which was awful? We thought because we placed technology people, we could go to Google, Apple, um, Oracle, SAP, and those people would love to work for a staffing company. No, they did not want to leave Apple and Google to come work for their local IT staffing company down the street.
Yeah.
So don't set yourself up to fail. Find your fishing hole. Who would view you as a step up but has great skills to help with the foundation?
Herb, I never put it together like that, and I'm glad we just had that conversation. I never put it together like that because I do I always say to my folks, I don't care if you know social media. I don't care if you know how to do this or this job. We can teach you that skill. What I care about is, are you organized? Can you do this? Can you do this? How's your handling of people? How's your people skills? How do you write? That type of thing. And so I didn't realize that I was building a fishing hole, but you're 100% correct. That's you know, I think too many times I once read a job description, or there was a job offer on LinkedIn. This was a couple of years ago, where they were talking about, again, maybe it was probably 5 or 7 years ago, where the person that you could tell it was a corporate written job posting. So they're saying, must have 20 years of experience on social media. And I'm looking at it going, social media is not 20 years old. How
Right,
are you going
right.
to find somebody? And it was quite obvious. It was just somebody putting it together. It was before AI, so you can't blame AI, but some people just don't think through what they really need in terms of the skills that they need, which
Yeah.
is, I think, a different way of saying what you're saying, which is hire for the skill you need, not necessarily being pigeonholed into saying, well, we're a technology staffing firm, so we need technologists.
Yeah. One other thing that may help too is a lot of people advertise for the title and the duties,
Oh, yeah.
but try adding in advertising with your values and your purpose.
Yeah.
And you're going to find for the right person, they're magnetic, it will draw them. And for the wrong person, they won't respond and you don't care.
Yeah.
But let them know a little bit about the environment versus 3 to 5 years doing sales or inbound calls, because I think we're missing an opportunity there to use our purpose and values as a great employee brand initiative or message.
Yeah. Well, we're close to running out of time, Herb, and it's been great. How do people get in touch with you if they want either side of your coaching, whether it's scaling up or whether it's exit readiness? I don't want to call
Yeah.
it exit planning.
Well, they're all kind of inclusive, which is good because I holistically want to help all of our owners and entrepreneurs. Simply go to my website, aspiregrowthadvisors.com. There's a complimentary scaling up readiness assessment. So if you don't know what your biggest gap is right now to the next stage of growth, please check it out. I'm happy to have a complimentary coaching call to help you internalize what that means. And we always have an array of options for a next step, from a $20 book or a course or coaching that will meet your budget and where your company's at.
We'll put the link to your website in the description for anybody who wants to know, and we'll also do it when we send out the clips on social media. So if anybody's looking for that clip, we'll have it. But great, I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on. It was a really interesting discussion. I appreciate it, and I don't do any more triathlons. If you do them small, do the small ones.
Yeah, no, Phil, I'm going to take your advice, stick to the Olympic or the sprint. And thank you. It's been a pleasure being here as well.
Thank you, Herb. Thanks a lot. And again, I think it wraps up another powerful episode. Thanks to Herb again. But if you're a founder and you're an executive looking to scale, or you take away from this exit readiness, give Herb a call. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Take advantage of what he was talking about with a free assessment, and you never know. It'll help you. It'll help you grow your business. It'll help you exit. It'll help you be prepared. It'll help your family out, and it'll help your future out. So, thanks again, Herb, and again, appreciate you coming on and taking the time.
Thank you, and looking forward to catching up somewhere down the road. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, great. Thank you.